Welcome to the Deep Dive
where we sift through the sources.
and bring you the really important bits of knowledge. Today, well, we're looking at a truly wild economic idea.
Yeah, from right in the middle of the Great Depression, it's quite something.
Picture it, the 1930s. Millions are out of work, suffering. But the weird thing is, it wasn't because there wasn't enough stuff.
No, not at all. Observers back then talked about glutted markets and surpluses. Too much stuff, actually.
It's this huge paradox. Frank Vanderlip, who was a big banker, even calls it a stupid depression.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because the problem wasn't production, it was consumption, or the lack of it.
Exactly. It marks this real turning point in how people thought about economics.
For ages, going back to Malthus, the big fear was scarcity, running out of things.
Right. Not having enough food, enough resources.
But by the 1930s, technology had boosted production so much that the challenge flipped. It became about, well, how do we get people to buy all this stuff? How do you organize the buyers?
And that's the kicker, isn't it? All this abundance, these surpluses, they actually tanked prices.
Made it pointless to produce anything new. The whole system just seized up.
It wasn't a shortage. It was a breakdown in how things moved, how they were consumed.
And crises like that breed radical thinking. So in 1932, this guy, Bernard London, comes out with a pamphlet.
And the title alone tells you it's bold. Ending the Depression Through Planned Obsolescence.
Yeah. His thinking was, look, these are man-made problems, so the solutions have got to be man-made too. Planned. Deliberate.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack London's plan. It's pretty out there.
Definitely. We'll look at the mechanics he proposed, like how he thought you could actually control a product's lifespan.
And what that meant for wealth, for labor. It's a really unique snapshot of a historical moment trying to solve an impossible problem. We think it might make you look at, well, your own stuff differently.
Okay, so let's start with the problem London saw. He called it the paradox of plenty, or sometimes consumption paralysis.
Right. He noticed that people's habits, the way Americans normally behaved, had changed drastically. Fear, hysteria, it gripped everyone.
He pointed out that in good times, people replaced things pretty easily. Fashion, new models.
Yeah, you'd get a new car or whatever long before they were worn out, as he put it, just because it was, quote, obsolete.
It was just a done thing, a natural cycle.
But then the Depression hits, and London says people went retrenchment mad.
Suddenly, everyone's holding on to their old cars, their old tires, their old radios, and their old clothing.
Using them way longer than expected. He actually said they were disobeying the law of obsolescence.
Which, from his point of view, was a disaster. He saw this huge untold loss because you had, 10 million people unemployed?
All that wasted work power, he called it. He saw chaos, and he blamed it on an unplanned economic existence. The system was blocked up.
Because goods weren't moving out, making way for new ones?
Okay, let's unpack this. The idea that people using things too long was actually bad for the economy. That feels really counterintuitive to us today, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It totally flies in the face of, sustainability and buy-it-for-life ideas.
But London was looking at it purely through the lens of keeping the economic machine running. For him, frugality was the enemy of employment.
Exactly. So his solution had to be just as, unconventional, the core idea, to chart the obsolescence at the time of production.
So not just a suggestion, right? He wanted the government to literally assign a lease of life to products.
Everything. Manufactured goods, stuff from mines, even farm produce, right when it's made.
So you as a consumer would know up front. This toaster lasts 3 years, this car 5 years, whatever it might be.
And here's the really radical part. Once that time was up, the item was legally dead.
Legally dead? What does that even mean?
It meant it would be collected by a government agency, and this is key.
Yeah.
It would be destroyed if there's widespread unemployment.
Destroyed.
Yes.
Just like that.
The goal was nonstop turnover. New products would constantly be pouring forth, keeping factories busy, keeping people employed. It's a legal mandate for replacement explicitly linked to the job market.
Wow. Okay. So how did he imagine actually starting something like this? You've got all this old stuff already out there.
Right. He proposed a huge one-time sweeping up. His example was spending something like $2 billion, a massive sum, then to buy up all the obsolete and useless buildings, machinery, automobiles, and other outworn junk.
$2 billion just to buy up old stuff.
Yeah, but he figured that initial investment, that destruction, would kickstart $20 to $30 billion worth of work. Construction, factories, a huge stimulus.
And he stressed this initial clear-out was a one-off thing.
The first time only, he said, just to get the new system rolling.
Okay, but then there's the question of ongoing funding. How does the government pay for taking in all this dead stuff over time?
Ah, that's another clever, if maybe slightly strange, part of his plan. He called it a new reservoir of income.
A reservoir.
Yeah. So people turn in their used, obsolete stuff, say your old dining room, set to these government depots,
Okay.
and you get a receipt for its possible value. Not cash, mind you.
Right, just a piece of paper saying this old furniture might be worth something?
Exactly. But these receipts become partially equivalent to money in one specific way,
Which is?
paying a new sales tax that London also proposed.
Ah, okay. So let's say I buy a new radio for $100 and there's a $10 sales tax.
You'd pay the $100 cash for the radio, but you could use $10 worth of those receipts from your old furniture to cover the tax.
So the government isn't actually paying cash for the old stuff.
Not a cent, he emphasized. But the receipts act like a targeted currency specifically to pay this tax on new purchases. It incentivizes buying new things.
And keeps the wheels greased, as he put it, maintains employment. It's like recycling value from the past to fund the future.
In a very structured, government-controlled way. But London didn't stop there. He had an idea for people who didn't want to play along.
What, people who wanted to keep their old stuff even after it was legally dead?
Precisely. He proposed taxing them.
Taxing people for using old clothes or old cars.
Yes, taxing people who continued using things after they have passed their obsolescence state.
What was the justification for that? It sounds pretty punitive.
His logic was that these people were retarding progress. They were preventing business from functioning normally.
So you tax the people holding things back, not the ones cooperating and promoting progress,
Yeah.
by buying new things.
That was the idea. He even argued it would be easier to enforce than income tax.
How so?
Because, material things with a known date of manufacture are harder to hide than income. Your old car is sitting right there.
It shows how seriously he took this idea of mandatory flow. Individual choice kind of takes a backseat to the system's needs.
Definitely. And his thinking went even deeper into the relationship between capital and labor.
Okay, how did planned obsolescence tie into that?
Well, he saw a fundamental inequality. A worker gets paid, the wages meager, spent quickly. But the thing they built, a building, a machine.
Right, that keeps generating income for its owner for years, maybe decades.
Exactly. London wanted to correct that imbalance. His solution? Arbitrarily limiting the return to capital to a stipulated period of years.
Limiting the return.
How? Through the obsolescence date. Once a machine or building reached its assigned end of life and became legally dead.
The state takes it over.
Yes. The remaining value, the future benefit, would revert to the people via the state controlling the dead asset.
But what if factories were actually busy? Did you still have to destroy the machine?
He allowed some flexibility there. If there was no unemployment, the state could choose to extend the item's life.
But
If by its replacement idle workers can be given jobs, then the old machine should be destroyed, make way for a newer, maybe better one, and create work.
so the decision is always tied back to employment levels
Always. That was the prime directive.
and determining these lifespans. Who gets that job?
He envisioned competent engineers, economists, and mathematicians doing that. Experts working for the government, calculating the optimal life for everything.
It's very technocratic.
Yeah.
A belief in scientific management of the economy.
It really is. And it raises this fundamental question, He's rethinking how long capital gets to earn returns and who ultimately benefits from the wealth created by labor. It's not infinite accumulation for the owner anymore.
When you dig into his underlying philosophy, it's pretty stark.
Yeah. He flat out said, miracles do not happen. They must be planned.
He saw the Depression not as some act of God, but as a failure of human planning, right?
Completely. And so the solution had to be equally planned, even if it involved, destruction. This destroy to create logic is central.
He had that analogy about battleships, didn't he?
Right. If society thinks it's okay to sink multi-million-dollar warships for target practice, then surely, he argued, we can afford to destroy obsolete and useless products if it means creating jobs and avoiding catastrophe.
It puts things in a very different perspective.
He also pointed to everyday examples we accept: burning coal for power,
Consuming oil in engines.
eating grain, or planting it as seed. All forms of destruction that lead to new value or life. He saw old, unused goods as clogging the system, like undigested food. Wealth needed to circulate.
He even wanted to redefine how we measure things, said our traditional weights and measures were incomplete.
Because they missed life and time.
Yeah.
He argued a full description needed to include the item's maximum lifespan.
Like, this car is 5 years, this building is 25 years, part of its fundamental identity.
And the reason was to ensure capital only bought the use of that item for that limited period.
Oh.
After that.
The remaining value will revert to labor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mechanism for wealth redistribution baked right into the product life cycle.
Well, pretty radical stuff.
And it all points towards this vision of a highly planned, very stable economy.
Absolutely. The state becomes the master regulator of business, managing everything, ensuring smooth functioning, balancing capital and labor, guaranteeing employment.
He even talked about government lending for new construction, didn't he?
Yeah, at low, stable interest rates like 2.5 or 3%, part of that payment would go to amortization, setting up predictable replacement cycles down the road.
Which he argued would create safe, steady, and permanent investments, much better than the risky, high-interest speculation happening during the Depression.
He saw it as a way to stabilize capital investment, ironically, by limiting its lifespan.
And he thought this could all happen fast.
Relatively fast, yeah. Using existing tax systems, get people back to work within a comparatively short time. He even thought it would kill speculation, like who's going to hoard wheat if it has a 2-year legal life and gets taxed after that?
It really is a vision of a profoundly different role for government, managing the entire life of goods, managing the economy itself.
Yeah. Ultimately, London saw it as creating a socially responsible system.
Where wealth wasn't just freedom, but came with obligations.
Exactly. Wealth carries responsibility, he said. It's not a license to freedom and immunity from obligation. His main goal, his stated aim, was clear.
Which was?
To satisfy the self-supporting multitudes by providing them with regular employment at a living wage which will assure the American standard of living.
He talked about moving beyond a medieval distribution of wealth, aiming for a minimum standard for everyone. It's quite a vision.
Born out of desperation, maybe, but incredibly detailed and thought through. A fundamental rethink.
So, wrapping up our deep dive,
Yeah.
that was Bernard London's incredibly audacious plan from 1932, ending the Depression through planned obsolescence, born from that strange paradox of poverty amidst plenty.
Yeah, a time wrestling with too much production, too little consumption, his answer. Purposeful destruction to force creation and jobs. It really challenges our ideas about waste and value.
Okay, so here's something to chew on. London's radical 1932 solution contrasts so sharply with our modern debates: sustainability, the circular economy, reducing consumption.
Right, we worry about making too much, using too many resources. He worried about things lasting too long.
So, does his idea of state-mandated destruction and replacement, as controversial as it is, hold any weird resonance today? In a world drowning in fast fashion, rapid tech upgrades, and, environmental worries, is there anything, however uncomfortable, to learn from his focus on systemic flow, even if his methods seem extreme?
That's definitely something to think about.